Imagine with me you've just been presented a piece of delicious looking chocolate cake with a nice little cherry on top. And this piece of chocolate cake looks just like all other pieces of chocolate cake you've ever eaten before, and you love chocolate cake, so you're excited to eat this. But as you raise a bite of what you assume is going to be a delicious, moist piece of cake to your lips, you realize this is not the same kind of chocolate cake you're used to. This is an imitation made by a baker who has no idea what they're doing. This is in fact a poo-poo cake, and that, my friends, is Reminiscence. Hey, I'm Desmodo and I talk movies and television. If you love movies and television, then you're gonna love it on this channel. Be sure to subscribe and like this video. Let's get to it. All right, so let's talk brass tacks. This movie was directed by Lisa Joy, who was the writer and director of Westworld. Reminiscence is starring Hugh Jackman, Rebecca Ferguson, and Thandiwe Newton, also from Westworld. This movie's set in a near-future Miami being flooded by rising sea levels, and we have Hugh Jackman's character Nick Bannister, who is essentially a hypnotist who uses technology that allows people to access any memory of their choosing. His life changes, and the story of the film begins to take off when he meets a beautiful woman named May and falls in love. So naturally, I'll begin this review at the beginning of the movie, which was my favorite part of the movie. We had a beautiful drone-looking shot coming into Miami, again showing this flooded landscape full of skyscrapers and beautiful looking imagery and design. It actually reminded me quite a bit of Inception when we're taken to purgatory, and it also appears to be surrounded by water crashing against the side of the land. And I remember pretty vividly a very similar looking shot coming into that similar looking city landscape, and that was just the beginning of the connections you might feel between this movie and Inception. In this opening scene, we have Hugh Jackman providing voiceover in a very Max Payne type way, and eventually we're taken to Hugh Jackman's character Nick's lab, where he provides these services to people to access their memories. Once we're in the lab, the feeling of the movie changed a lot for me. Probably because it was Hugh Jackman, but also the design of this particular room felt very Prestige-like, specifically Tesla's lab in the Prestige. There's even like one of those industrial-looking light switch things that I remember seeing in the Prestige, and Hugh Jackman uses it several times throughout this movie to turn his machine on. Finally, this movie also felt kind of Westworld-ish. That could have just been because there were multiple actors that were in Westworld that were also in this movie, but there were a couple scenes that did specifically feel like some of the scenes I remember out of that show. If you couldn't tell from the intro, I strongly disliked this movie, and so I suppose I should take a little bit of time to tell you specifically why that is. First of all, there was way too much telling and not enough showing. The last movie that felt that way was the movie Old, which was done in a super cheesy, bad acty way. This movie kind of delivered it a little bit better with Hugh Jackman's narration, but it was still just an unenjoyable way to consume the story. Beyond that, this film felt like it was trying super hard to be a Christopher Nolan film, which is incredibly ironic because Lisa Roy's brother-in-law is actually Christopher Nolan. There's a couple reasons I say it felt like it was trying real hard to be Christopher Nolan-like. First of all, that opening scene that I was talking about, the premise of the story, messing with time and past and memories. But there were also some specific lines in the movie that was just like, y'all really trying. And one of them is very early in the film when Hugh Jackman's character shows up late to work and he's told that he's running late, to which he responds, "Late is a construct of time and we don't abide by that," which was one of the many kind of cheesy lines in this movie. And then another one was later in the film, Hugh Jackman runs up to a character and she's like all out of sorts, and her first thing that she says to Nick is, "When are we?" Again, just felt like really trying to push this whole alteration of time continuum thing. Beyond that, the writing just felt incredibly sloppy. There were multiple jokes that Thandiwe's character used multiple times, and I thought for a minute there was purpose to those jokes and that eventually something would be revealed later and it'd be like, oh, that's why she kept saying that joke, but that never happened. And then there were multiple scenes that just didn't contribute to the overall story. There was this one scene where it was very obvious what they were hoping to, I guess, call out or portray, and that was a scene where Hugh Jackman enters a courthouse. He's there for a reason, but this side thing happens where this criminal's being like escorted out of the building and he like breaks free of the guards, and then there's this other guard who draws his gun and is about to shoot the guy, and Hugh Jackman quickly takes the gun from him and like elbows the criminal in the face or something, and he says, "There's better ways to stop a man than a bullet," which I know that didn't sound like Hugh Jackman, but you get my point. So yeah, I guess they're taking a stab at how bad America is with our cops and our shootings, which is a thing, but it just didn't feel like it fit in this movie. It just didn't contribute at all to the story, and I was just like, oh, cool. Now, another thing that I did really hate about this movie was Daniel Wu's character, named Saint Joe. This guy's basically like a mafia leader, and like his hideout is cheesy, his interests are cheesy, his lines are awful. That character just like took an entire star off of the rating of this movie. It was bad. At exactly 59 minutes into this movie, they hooked me. There was a revelation by Hugh Jackman's character that was very interesting, and it seemed like, oh man, I'm actually excited to see where this goes and how this turns out. But it ended up falling super flat and wasn't that interesting, and they completely lost me when Hugh Jackman's character, which is a Navy war veteran in this movie, had a really big fight scene with Cliff Curtis's character. And by really big, I want to say this was at least a 15-minute, at least it felt like 15 minutes, where they're like fighting on rooftops, falling into buildings, and going underwater. It's the longest fight sequence in the entire movie. And you're like, okay, got this military dude, and then this other guy who was basically part of that mafia I was talking about. They know how to fight. I won't talk about how that fight scene ends, but the main point is Cliff Curtis's character is a proven great fighter throughout that sequence. Not even 20 minutes later in the movie, you have Rebecca Ferguson's character who runs into Cliff Curtis's character, and literally like in less than 4 seconds, she physically fends him off and escapes. And it was just like, she's a better fighter than the war veteran, I guess. Mind you, Rebecca Ferguson's character in this movie is not some like assassin with highly trained fighting skills or anything like that. Finally, the cherry on top of this turd cake was the ending, which was highly predictable and not surprising at all. I won't tell you what the ending was, but you're going to see it coming. When it happens, you're just like, that's how this should have ended. I know I just put up a video a week or so ago hating on the Suicide Squad, but I've got to be honest, this movie was worse. This is the worst movie I've seen in 2021. I tried really hard to find positive things about it. I promise I did. I just couldn't. So for me, this is a 1.5 star, which is a bit painful to rate because that rating is one in which I considered I just wasted my time watching a movie, and I don't generally give movies that low of a rating because I can typically enjoy most movies, but not this one. All right, that's gonna do it for this video. Do you intend on watching this movie still after such a great review? Were you planning on watching this movie at all? Have you ever even heard of this movie? Comment below. I hope to catch you in the next one where hopefully we talk about a good movie. See ya.